I just like the idea of knowing how the modern era kind of compares. Everyone's got the era that they feel is their kind of time where they either came into the club or were really kind of involved in every game or as a fan or whatever. And I think, my real era was the kind of 90s and early 2000s. And when you look back at the kind of 90s era and what I feel is the classic team, that won't be everyone's classic team because you know, of course, that's many years ago now. But I think, oh yeah, I know where they are, and I know all those players where they are on the list. And when you suddenly realise that some people are coming up on the list, and now you think, oh yeah, okay, time moves on, and it's someone else's turn now, and so on. So it's always nice to see where people are doing. Connor Jennings is moving up the list on both counts, 58 goals now, I think, and he'll be in the top 30. I think he'll be 30th equal next goal, and two more goals will put him in the top 30 kind of on his own, which seeing as we've had, nearly 1,100 players wear the shirt, it feels nice that you can think, he might not know that, but it's nice that if he asked, you could say, oh, you're in the top 30, keep going. Yeah. it's some achievement and appearance wise as well. Can't remember off the top of my head without looking, but he's moving up there. Leo Connor is, you know, I think over Leo Connor's over 200 games and that kind of thing. So it's always nice to see where everyone is as well. So I really enjoy it.
Do you know what would also be fascinating as well? Because I don't know when you started populating that particular list, but obviously Tranmere. Do you go back to 1921 or do you go back to earlier than that?
No, I go back to 1921 when we first played in the league, and I always do absolutely give a nod to the complete record book because I lifted that wholesale in 1997. I didn't have any other information to go by, but then I think Steve Wilson and Gil Upton did an update of it in about 2010. I haven't got that book because I kept my own records from '97 onwards anyway. So I just thought, oh, this book's fascinating. I've got the basis of all this information, which everyone else has done the legwork for, but it'll be nice to keep it going. And all of a sudden, that's from '97 onwards. That's nearly 30 years. It's nearly 30
Yeah.
years already of records now. So, I hope we can, if we can add the two together, at least we've got a bit of information about the club. It's a nice I feel like it's a nice archive to have because remember Steve Wilson's intro in the book was saying nobody had ever done this. Probably for Liverpool or Man United there'll be umpteen different versions of this kind of history, and nobody had done it for Tranmere. And that really struck a chord with me, and I thought, well, keep it going then, which I've managed to do ever since. So yeah, it's nice to have the information there.
Well, I know Steve listens to this podcast, and I'm sure he'll be delighted to hear himself name drop. But what I was going to say was it would be fascinating to do a study, and it's probably quite easy to do. But we've had from your records 104 and a half years worth of history. If we go from 1921 onwards,
Mm.
you're saying just over 1,100 players, was it? I mean, I wonder how many of them have come in the 21st century from when football really did change and squads grew in size, and obviously transfers became much more prevalent. I imagine it's not far off half.
It was probably half, and that'd be a really interesting thing to look at. I think the last new debutant, and unless I'm wrong, in the last couple of weeks was Aaron McGowan. I think he was number 1,075. Maybe I might be without looking at it. It'll be around that figure. I remember back in the 90s, in the early 90s, particularly in the era of people like Eric Nixon and Jed Brannon, and when Johnny Morrissey had come through from the 80s to the 90s, and all those kind of people there, you used to get about three new players a season. You know, you'd sign up, you maybe would have someone come in who wasn't there the season before. It might be Pat Nevin coming in '92 or somebody like that, or Alan Rogers or somebody, these '90s names, and there'd be three people a season who come in. And these days you have 16 people on loan by the by the spring, and you think, the turnover of players is remarkable. Even looking at some of the names from the squads for the games that we're going to chat about, I'm thinking even some of them I'm having to think, crikey, I don't know, yeah, how long was he there for? And he was there for about 7 games, but having to look him up and remember how he came in and so on. Because some of these names, it's not that I can pull them all out of my memory at the drop of a hat. Some of them disappear, and you think, crikey, yeah, we signed him on loan for 3 minutes in 2017 and that kind of thing. And I'd be interested. It's probably about 50-50 since the turn of the century, and that's only 25 years, not 100. So be interesting to see.